Hey everybody, PJ here. Hope you're all having a good day. Greetings from windy central Alberta. Holy crap, it's windy today. I'd like to react to a video I saw from the National Post that poses a question that many of us wonder about, especially those of us who study a little bit of history, even at a surface level. And that is, why did the United States not take over Canada? And I don't mean this from a point of desire of, personal opinion that I hope that the United States takes over Canada. I mean, historically, the most powerful country in the world, south of us. It's a country that's been expansionist in the past. It's not like they haven't taken territory before. You have places like Alaska, way north. They purchased it from Russia. Then you have Hawaii, the whole history with that. Then you got many territories all over the world, including Guam, Puerto Rico, so on and so forth. And just like Alaska, why didn't they purchase Canada before? Many people will say that they tried, that the US actually tried to invade Canada, and that is partially true. They did invade Canada, especially during the War of 1812 against Great Britain. Then again, it wasn't really Canada, it was Britain. It was British North America. That's like saying the United States prior to 1776, that was not the United States. That was the British colonies of America. It wasn't the United States yet. The United States started in 1776. So same goes for Canada. It wasn't Canada, it was British North America. So it was really Britain. These territories were part of Britain. And in 1812, the brand new United States, still, making an impact in the world, starting to develop strength. Britain, having fought them and lost during the American Revolution, they were doing everything in their power to try to sabotage the United States. And one of those things that they were doing was at the maritime level. They were trying to block trade. So what I'm trying to say is the objective during the War of 1812 wasn't mainly to take over Canada. It was mostly to use Canada as a bargaining chip to get the British Empire to stop blocking them and stop their maritime blockade of trade against the United States. Long story short, it basically explains partly why the United States didn't really take over Canada. And this is all important and relevant, especially with the conversation today that President Donald Trump has started.
Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada.
He's obviously talking about the United States-Canada border, the 49th parallel. So let's watch this video and let's see what you all think.
When he was Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau told CNN's Jake Tapper that the singular defining trait of his country was that it wasn't the United States. One of the ways we define ourselves most easily is, well, we're not American, he said. Trudeau was roundly mocked for saying this, as it's not tremendously impressive for a country to define itself by what it isn't. If you ask, say, France or Japan why they exist, they're going to have a better answer than, we're not the country next door. But Trudeau wasn't wrong. If you're wondering why a bunch of loosely affiliated British colonies teamed up in the latter half of the 19th century to govern 2% of the Earth's surface, the answer is because they didn't want to be Americans. In the 1850s, it was considered a given that the United States would eventually come to rule all of North America. That's even what the British figured. They'd hold on to their North American colonies as long as they could, but come on now. You've got a heavily armed, expansionist United States snapping up new land in every direction. The smart money was on the idea that one by one, these colonies would all throw in their lot with the US. Maybe you'd get Nova Scotia or Prince Edward Island holding out as isolated microstates, but that's about it.
And that's the thing. They asked this guy, Justin Trudeau. He was our last prime minister prior to getting Mark Carney in there. He went on a tour right before he resigned, or I think it was after he resigned, before he gave up the seat, the prime minister seat. He was asked, what are Canadians? Like, what is it that makes you Canadians? And he said, well, we're not Americans. That was his answer for what a Canadian is. And again, he's not far off. that's the culture. It's the culture of loyalists, people who wanted to continue being a part of the crown. The Americans in 1776 during the American Revolution, that's literally what they fought the war against, was the crown, against the King of England, against the oppression being put on them and taxation without representation from the UK to the 13 American colonies. However, Canadians are mostly descendants of those who stayed loyal to the crown. They didn't want to be Americans. They did not want to become independent from the British. They wanted to stay loyal. They wanted to stay a part of the UK, and that's what it is to this day. What's a Canadian? Well, you know, we're not American. They'll say, well, we speak two languages. Well, that's really only true in Quebec. And, you know, it's mostly French. It's not like it's everywhere. Like you come up to Alberta and someone's going to speak French to you. You start speaking French to some Albertan and they might just curse you out. They might just ignore you. They might just walk away. There's a couple pockets here and there in New Brunswick. I think New Brunswick, after Quebec, New Brunswick is the actual province that does have some French in it. And then you have little pockets here and there of some Frenchies, and those are less and less. Most of Canada speaks English. So it's not even like it's bilingual everywhere. Hell, the United States is more bilingual than Canada is. Why? Because every single state, there's a bunch of people who speak Spanish. Some states more than others. Like you take Texas, Spanish is spoken as a strong second language after English. Same in California. But pretty much every state, Spanish is basically a second language. It's just not official. But the point that I'm trying to make is that bilingualism is a lot more common in the United States when it comes to Spanish English than it is to find French in northern British Columbia or Alberta. Then you have the whole free healthcare thing, which they use to say that that's another thing that makes them different. It's not free, it's socialized healthcare, and it's covered by the taxpayers. Anyone who works in Canada works full-time. They know that if you have a bi-weekly paycheck of $3,000, take-home pay is actually $1,600. So the government takes nearly half of your money. Every time you get that paycheck, you realize that our healthcare is not free. You actually, if you were to pay for private healthcare, you would end up paying a lot less.
The U.S. Civil War happens, so they're distracted for a while. Second, this guy, Sir John A. Macdonald. Without him, you don't have Canada. You just don't. He's pretty instrumental to the story. For a brief window of time in the 1860s, all these British North American colonies that don't really like each other all that much, or have anything to do with one another, suddenly see the virtue of joining together.
Forced together.
United, they
basically
just might have enough economic and defensive clout to hold off the American juggernaut. As a united country, Canada would be able to put in a bid to buy Rupert's Land, the vast territory loosely managed by the Hudson's Bay Company. And then they could convince the distant west coast colony of British Columbia, a place they also had nothing to do with, to also join its not American confederation. Then you throw up the world's longest railroad, put just enough Mounties and cattle ranches so that it looks occupied enough to deter any American land grabs. Obviously, the Americans could still take Canada if they wanted it, but this would be like locking the front door.
And that's what I say all the time. They could have taken it then, and they could take it now. Don't kid yourselves. Don't kid yourselves. Again, I'm an Albertan. I don't kid myself. If America truly wanted to take all of Canada by force, it could. Of course, may I add, some people will put up a fight, because there's some patriotic people here who are brave. And they'll put up a fight. A large percentage of Canadians might even welcome them as liberators because they're realizing just how bad things are under the current system that Canada has. And like I said, another portion might fight them, but realistically, not only do they have the strongest military in the world, it would take a day or two if you're realistic for them to actually take over militarily. Now, America has never done that, except for the War of 1812, in which they really came into Canada and they invaded because they were trying to fight off the British influence in North America and mostly use Canada as a bargaining chip to get Great Britain, the British Empire, to stop the blockade, the maritime blockade of American trade.
That if they really want Canadian territory, they can't just walk in. They've got to break a window. It's one of the most far-fetched schemes to build a nation ever conceived. But you know what? It worked.
It worked.
The United States took a lot of land in the 19th century. Hawaii, Puerto Rico, half of Mexico, not to mention the conquest of its own frontier. But they never took Canada. And thus, alternative United States remains a democratic transcontinental nation of immigrants, but one in which the American Revolution never happened.
All right, thanks for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Special thanks to those of you who have donated to this project. It is much appreciated, and it helps me continue making videos. See you on the next one. Peace.